Big Nasty. Yeah, Big Nasty, Hall of Fame Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan, baby.
This is Mike Allstott, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Cannon Fire Podcast.
Cannon Fire Podcast, brother. You ain't listening, and you're missing out. Woo!
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Back at you today for episode 138. Happy Victory Monday, Bucs fans. The best kind of Mondays. And who doesn't love a good grilled cheese on a Victory Monday? I mean, I know I do. And it feels just so good. So good. It's indescribable. You know, at the beginning of the season, when this game showed up on the schedule, I knew I was excited. I talked about it on the season preview show. I talked about it leading up to the game. Obviously, we were both kind of nervous, but I was excited for this game. I was excited to see the Bucs somewhat under the lights taking on the Packers. I'm glad they broke out the pewter pants, and we got a little bit of everything in this game. I'm so excited to go over it. I got shades of Warren Sapp kicking the crap out of Brett Favre from Ndamukong Suh. That's something we haven't said a lot on this show. Oh, man. But we're not going to get into it all right now. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, as always, Rhett Matthew. Joined alongside me, as always, my good buddy and co-host, the Philly Bucs fan himself, Mr. Evan Wanish. Happy Victory Monday, my friend. What a Victory Monday it is.
So this morning I woke up and I was trying to think of the last time that the Buccaneers defense completely dominated a good offense, like the offense of a good team. I mean, completely dominated, not just play well against. And probably, I think 2016 versus Seattle, that game that they won 14-5. I think that was probably the one that I could come up with. What a mauling. They beat this is a PG show, so I'm going to say they beat the spit out of that team. And I think you know what I wanted to say. But yeah, they just clobbered them. And like I said, you've seen it occasionally with the Bucs from when they beat up on bad teams, but you don't really see this much domination from them against good teams. So this was a really encouraging sign.
Well, and I'll tell you what as well. You know, the improvement that we saw just in sheer discipline from last week to this week. 0 penalties for the Buccaneers. The second time in franchise history. 44 years the Buccaneers have been a football team, and only twice has that happened. The last time it happened was 83? It's been a long-ass time.
Yeah, so another stat that I believe I saw on ESPN this morning, and I was like, wow. So the Buccaneers are the first team this century, okay? Since the last time it happened was 1999. The Buccaneers are the first team this century to have a game with 0 penalties, 0 turnovers, and 0 sacks.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not kidding. That is a real stat. The last time it happened was 1999. And that just speaks to how flawlessly they honestly played.
And I'll tell you what makes the win, that much better was the underwhelming first quarter that we came out to. You and I were texting each other back and forth, and you said something that I didn't agree with. I thought it was pretty funny, but I'm going to bring it up just to hold it over your head here. Halfway through the first quarter, Mr. Evan texts me. He's like, you want to go ahead and record now? Because I think this one's just about over. Bucs were down 10-0 at that point. And I'll be honest with you, with the team that Green Bay was, and still is, don't get me wrong, they're not a team that's going to, miss the playoffs because of this.
Yep.
But with the way that game had started out, it did not seem very likely that the Bucs were going to bounce back. Obviously, with Tom Brady and then the defense playing the way that they played, because we'll talk about Brady, we'll talk about the stat lines here really quick. But if anybody says anything other than the defense carrying this game, then clearly they didn't watch it, because without those 2 turnovers, one of them the Jamel Dean pick 6, the Bucs would not have gotten back into this game and been playing in a much better situation.
I'm trying to imagine a world without that Jamel Dean pick 6, and it just is not a fun one if you're a Buccaneers fan. Yeah, that game, if the Packers go up 17-0, that game is done. Like, the Bucs just had no juice on offense. Like, they come out, and the biggest thing we said was that they had to keep possession of it. What do? They go 3 and out right away, and take like 2 minutes off the clock. Give the ball right back. I mean, the first quarter went by so quick because the Green Bay had the ball for 13 minutes of it. So, yeah, that was just a huge play. And honestly, I personally think that right now that's the biggest play of the season. That is the most impactful play of the season. That is the biggest play of the season. Is there an opportunity for there to be another biggest play of the season that's bigger than that one? Absolutely. But I think without that pick 6 at that time, they lose that football game. And you're right. That completely changed the whole game. Rodgers didn't throw an interception all year. And then all of a sudden they pick him off twice in his, in 4 pass attempts, I think. So just insane. To me, just how the game flipped on that Dean interception, and that could end up being a thing that just propels this team to really find more success, and that could turn around a season. I'm not saying that the Buccaneers season needed to be turned around, but that's the type of play that can do it.
Absolutely, and in a game like that, it just means that much more.
Yep.
But you talk about flipping a game, man. After that Jamel Dean pick 6. It wasn't just domination. The Bucs kept it out of reach. It was 38 unanswered points. 38 unanswered points. The Packers came out with a 10-point lead. Everybody saw it who watched the game. 38 unanswered points. After that second interception, I believe it was Mike Edwards, right? It was the deflection.
Mike Edwards. Yep. Carlton Davis made a good play on it. I thought Carlton Davis played a good game, had some struggles early on, but he made a good play there. And Edwards was there, who actually just came in for Antoine Winfield, who got a little bit banged up. He went off, and Edwards came in, and what a play to be in.
Absolutely. Mike Edwards getting his second interception on the season. Great for him. But people can say what they want. I know what we said about Aaron Rodgers on the game preview show, and we're not taking anything away from him. But he was rattled after that second interception. Matt LaFleur and that Green Bay offense was rattled the rest of the game, whether it was from the pressure, whether it was from the great day that the secondary had, really shutting down any chance of a deep shot that they had. And even the run defense held up pretty damn well. You saw a couple of big runs. I think the biggest runs of the season on this Tampa Bay defense, but that defensive unit carried this game.
That's to be expected. That's to be expected with Vita Vea out. I tweeted that. I said, there's a few runs there. I'm like, if Vita Vea is in there, that run doesn't go for that. And it's just, that's going to happen now. Like, I still think they're a good run defense team, but they're not going to be number 1 anymore.
No, absolutely. But at the end of the day, with the way that the defense played and the way that the offense was just simply able to put points on the board, Ronald Jones having the game that he did, after all of it, this is a game that I feel extremely proud of. I can hang my hat on this and say I can come to the conclusion that the Bucs are a better team than I thought they were heading into this week. Because, again, we've talked about it endlessly on this show. We have seen some awesome performances from Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers so far this season. 5 touchdowns for Tom against the Chargers. There have been some highs. They've been against some bad teams. You brought in Tom Brady to beat the good teams, to beat the Aaron Rodgers, and he goes out there and he does that 38-10. Yes, with the help of the defense, but as just a team, I think this is the best 3 quarters of football that we have seen out of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in many, many years. But let's get into the stat lines. So first and foremost, I talked about them, but before we do that, I don't know who bet the over on Tom Brady yards this past weekend, but sorry to let you know, the defense carrying this game, you might have lost a little bit of money, because I'll be honest with you, I thought he was going to throw more than 166 yards.
Who bet, who would have bet that Aaron Rodgers' first pick would be a pick 6?
Yeah. Yeah, I know we made a little bit of a bold claim at the end of the show last week saying that this Bucs defense would get the first takeaway of the season for
Rhett,
Green Bay, but
where
I didn't
could
put any
where
money
could
on it.
you? Is there a place you could go to place that type of bet?
Yes, you can. I am very glad you asked, since you mention it. Our good friends over at betonline.ag. As you guys know, the NFL season is in full swing. You might not always be at the games this year, but you can still be in on the action at BetOnline. From game spreads and totals to team, player, and coaching props, BetOnline gives you more options to wager than any other place online. And they've always got their online casino, which never closes. Make sure you head over to betonline.ag today and you take advantage of all the great sign-up bonuses that they have got going on. That is betonline.ag, your online sportsbook expert. I'll tell you what, those sportsbook experts definitely love a little bit of this next topic right here, and these are the stat lines we're going to get into. Tom Brady, number 12, your starting quarterback for the Bucs. 17 for 27 attempts, 166 yards, 2 touchdowns. Obviously, it's not 5 touchdowns and nearly 400 yards, but we've talked about this here on the show before. If Tom Brady throws less than 200 yards, 1 or 2 touchdowns, and the Buccaneers win by multiple possessions, I think that's,
Who cares?
A much better expectation than Tom Brady having to carry it and will us back into the game.
That's a much more ideal situation, I think, for the Bucs as well.
Yeah, it's just a testament to how well this defense played. When you have a defense that can make plays, Tom Brady doesn't have to go out there and bust his ass. And let's show some credit while we're talking about Tom Brady having the day that he had. Let's show some credit to this offensive line, because not only did they allow Ronald Jones to run for his 3rd straight 100-yard game on the ground, Tom Brady didn't get sacked once.
Dude, I don't know if he got hit a few times, but he wasn't hit a whole lot. I remember he got hit a few times. He got poked in the eye, but
yeah, that was nasty.
Yeah,
his eye was all puffy.
That was just some bad luck there. But and the Packers defense, like I said, they got some real talent. It's like I said, Zadarius Smith going up against Donovan Smith. Donovan won that one. He was really good, and Kenny Clark came back for them this week, so he's obviously a fantastic football player. And this Packers defense was having some success against their opponents, and just at the run game. And that's why, if the run game's going like that, you don't need Brady to throw for over 300 yards, and 5 touchdowns. When the run game is going like that, you don't need that. So it takes pressure off of everybody.
Exactly. So big props to the offensive line. Those Hogs definitely came to play Sunday afternoon. Let's talk about Ronald Jones as well. As I mentioned before, his 3rd straight 100-yard game, 17 attempts, 106 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Ronald Jones is having a career season.
Well, I think the trajectory for him this season was to be better than last season. His rookie year was so bad, so you knew that his second year was going to be better just by almost default. And then his 3rd year, I think if he can keep this hot streak going, I know Leonard Fournette wasn't playing. I would expect Fournette to be back Sunday night versus in Vegas. But man, I don't know how much you want to disrupt this. The carries were kind of even when Fournette was in there. I don't know how much you want to disrupt Jones right now because he seems to be on a really good roll. And if he keeps it up, I think he's proving that he deserves that. And a big key for me this season has been, knock on wood. I just knocked on wood here. It always seemed like whenever Ronald Jones was starting to get going, maybe he'd have that one play that would end up being like a fumble or just like a dumb play. I remember the Arizona game. He was having a lot of success in the receiving game, and they tossed it to him. He was gaining the first down. They just lost the football.
I remember that. That was bad, man.
Yeah, that was not pretty. He hasn't had those types of plays this year. He really hasn't, and it's something that if he can eliminate those completely, I think he can be a solid back in this league. I still don't know if he's the guy that you can consistently give 25 times to every week like a Derrick Henry, because 1, I don't think anybody's Derrick Henry. And 2, I just don't think that's in his best interest. I think he's better when he can feed off of somebody else too. I don't think he's a guy that can be in all 3 downs. But yeah, it's just, this is the best he's looked in a Buccaneers uniform, and hopefully he can continue to keep it up. And I mean, he's got some opportunities here. Vegas defense isn't great, and the Giants defense isn't the best either. So he's got 2 more games coming up here where potentially he could get maybe extend that streak a little bit.
Absolutely. I'll be looking forward to it. Best Ronald Jones has looked in a Buccaneer uniform. And since it is the Bucs uniform that it is, they finally fixed it and they went back to what worked. 3 straight 100-yard games. He is strictly Ron Jones on this show now. No
Ron
more
Jones.
Rojo, no more Ronald Jones. Ron Jones. Because we have seen Ron Jones sighting after Ron Jones sighting. You know, we talk about how he runs angry and he runs powerful, and that's just what I like to see. And you know, the improvement that you talked about, I know the expectation this year was for him to be better, but I don't know, you know, at least from me, with the addition of Leonard Fournette and even LaShawn McCoy and Keyshawn Vaughn, I don't think anybody expected him to go out there and have to carry it 100-plus yards 3 straight games, but he's done just that. I'm not saying that, you know, adding Leonard Fournette back into the mix isn't in his best interest. I would hate to see him run his ass off and get hurt because, you know, you look at the health of any running back. They're a pretty disposable position, whether people like it or not. Injuries happen there. So giving him relief with a guy like Leonard Fournette, who clearly just kind of needs to get his feet wet once again. He's missed a few weeks, but I don't think it can be a bad thing. But I am definitely impressed with Ronald Jones, and Ron Jones, and I'm a very big fan of what he's bringing to the table.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and obviously, like you said, the offensive line's been doing a great job. And there's another player, I think by the name of Rob Gronkowski, who's been helping out with the offensive line. He's been a pretty good blocker, but showed off something we haven't really seen this year yet, huh?
Oh, man. Speaking of Gronk, I got his stat line right here. 5 receptions, 78 yards, 1 touchdown. So his best game in a Buccaneer uniform. But I'll tell you what, Gronk is back, dude.
That was vintage Brady and Gronk.
Yes.
On that one seam route, did you hear? I'm not sure if you caught that when Troy Aikman, like midway through the throw, you go, whoa!
Yeah,
like that was just, he was like amazed by that throw. That was they were on
right in the breadbasket, man. The touchdown in the corner of the end zone was damn nice too. But that one seam route, I will say this: as much as I love Gronk, and I'm glad that he's here, I feel much better after that game about him having to step up a little bit with the absence of O.J. Howard. I feel pretty damn good about what he showed us against Green Bay. But if you had O.J. Howard running that seam route, that's a touchdown.
I don't know.
I don't know. I think he would have shaked and baked toward the end right there. Got a little more get off speed. Come on, man.
I don't know
rumbling and tumbling down the seam. He played a great game, and let's not take anything away from him. I'm very glad he had the game that he did because
also I don't know. Did you notice that he kind of caught that touchdown one-handed?
I haven't watched it back as much as I hate to say it.
Like he didn't initially catch it. Like he kind of like cradled it with one hand, sort of.
Vintage Gronk, and I'm really glad that we got to see it in the white, red, and pewter. But the fact that it happened in Raymond James Stadium in a Buccaneer uniform is definitely a sight to behold. We talked about the offense and some of the big stat leaders there. I want to talk about this defense because, as we mentioned before, they absolutely carried the game. And I'll tell you a guy who I was watching all night was number 54, number 1 in your heart, Levante David. 8 combined tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, and 2 quarterback hits. While we mentioned Levante, let's talk about the stat line for the rest of this Bucs defense as well. 5 sacks. 4 of those were on Aaron Rodgers. 1 of them was on the backup. 2 interceptions. Because, by the way, 1 was on the backup because the Bucs were beating Green Bay so bad that they just decided to play a preseason game in the last 5 minutes of the game.
And there was a forced fumble on that sack.
Yes, there was. He was crawling after it, dude. That was hilarious to me. 2 interceptions on the day. 1 of them, the Jamel Dean pick 6. 13 quarterback hits. Oh, my Lord. 6 tackles for loss and 6 pass deflected. So Levante David leading the charge on an awesome day for this Buccaneer defense. But, I mean, I can't stress it enough, dude. Just what a game for that unit.
You know, when we went over the game preview, I said there was one man that had to play well, right? And his name was Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. I'll tell you what. You know the reason they won this football game? Guy by the name of Todd Robert Bowles.
Did you have to Google his middle name, or did you know it?
It's right here. It's on Google.
Oh, okay.
I definitely had to Google that. I definitely do not know that on the top of my head. But man, this dude has just transformed this defense. It is unbelievable how everybody has seemed to bought into his team, his defense. There's no reason that this guy shouldn't be the next Bucs head coach if they can retain him after this year. Because guess what? We can talk about all this praise, right? You give him enough praise, guess who's going to come calling at the end of the year? Other
Everybody
teams with
looking
head
for a new
coaches.
coach.
With head coaches. So what the Bucs are gonna have to do, and I tweeted this out on my personal account. Little shout out, follow at Evan NFL. But
He won't follow you back, by the way.
well, we'll see. I'll tell you what. Follow me. DM me a funny joke. If I think it's funny, I'll follow you. If I don't think it's funny, you're not gonna follow.
God, they have to please you.
Yeah, well, hey, you gotta be funny, all right? Just make a joke. Anyways, I basically tweeted that, like, I think the Bucs are gonna have to basically promise Todd Bowles that he's gonna be the next head coach after Bruce Arians, which presumably I would believe is at the end of next year. I think like it'll be this year, then next year for Arians, then that's it. But they're gonna have to probably give him a raise off of what he's making now. Make him maybe make his title like the assistant head coach, and give him a raise, and then promise him that he'll be the next head coach. I mean, because there's gonna be teams knocking, and I mean, who knows? Maybe he doesn't want to be a head coach, but man, if 3 or 4 teams come calling you, it'd be tough to say no to. So I think the Bucs need to do everything they can. They there was rumors, obviously it was different, but after the 2016 season, y'all wanted Mike Smith back, right? We all thought it was a good thing to get him back. And what did the Glazers do? They gave him a raise, right? Like they kept him. I expect the Glazers to do exactly the same thing with Todd Bowles. I honestly do. I think it's the same situation. They need to do. I think it's critical for this team's success next season and beyond to keep this guy in the organization. I think it is absolutely critical because there's no defensive coordinator that they can find right now that is going to be better than what this guy is doing. And I think this guy deserves a real shot at being a head coach again. That's not in New York with the lowly Jets. So I think they need to do everything they can to keep him.
The currently, 0-6 Jets? 0-7? 0-6.
0-6 with Adam Gase. Like, they fired Todd Bowles for Adam Gase. I understand Todd Bowles, like his record wasn't good, but man, like
it wasn't like he was working with a lot down there. And here's the thing. I don't want to spend too much time talking about the future, but I do agree with you. I think Todd Bowles, his role in the Buccaneers organization thus far has probably been the biggest felt because he has transformed this defense. I mean, not only did he come in and change the scheme, but the way that these guys are rallying around each other and the way that they're playing worth a damn now, it just speaks for itself. Todd Bowles doesn't have to say very much. He has done an awesome job in making this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, as it stands right now, one of the best in the NFL. No discussion. Will not hear otherwise. But I do want to ask you one thing about Todd Bowles. You know, if he simply doesn't want to be a head coach, how hard would it be for the Bucs to just have to bring him back as a coordinator? Do you think he'd have more interest in staying here? I guess it obviously depends on the money shaping up, but the only reason I ask is because, somebody put out a report today that Todd Bowles this morning was at One Buck at 4:30 a.m. watching film with his players. Can he really do that as a head coach?
No. I mean, so you can do that. Like Gruden got there at 5 o'clock every morning.
Right.
But like you might not be able to sit down with with a specific group of players and do it. That might be the biggest difference. It's different. Being a coordinator, you're focusing on one side of the ball. Being a head coach, you have to focus on all of them. And it's definitely different. Maybe he's more comfortable with that. I mean, if he is, that'd be great for the Bucs. I mean, you see a lot of these teams with these defensive coordinators that have been there for years, and they're good defensive coordinators because they don't leave to become head coaches. Everybody has been after the offensive coaches, right? And it's been good for those teams with defensive coordinators who they don't want to lose. And there's going to be some openings this year, obviously. Like there's going to be an opening. Obviously, he's not going back to New York, but there's going to be an opening in Atlanta. Could be an opening in Minnesota, Jacksonville. So I mean, there's going to be Detroit maybe. So there's going to be some teams that are maybe eyeing him up, and who knows? That's something we won't know whether he actually wants to be a head coach or not. Like we'll never really know that. I mean, if he doesn't, I'm sure the Bucs would be pleased, but I don't think it would be hard to keep him. Versus like if you say you're just going to be a defensive coordinator, you're going to stay with the Bucs. You'll probably get a raise. I think he'll get a raise either way. But I think. I mean, I didn't see that report personally, but I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. He seems sort of like a crazy mad scientist, film junkie guy. So
the crazy mad scientist part definitely sounds fitting when it comes to the style of the Bucs defense that we have seen. But, let's talk about the stuff that we do know. Enough about the stuff that we don't know yet, all the, yet to be seen type of things.
That's way down the line.
Let's talk about the stuff that we do know and something else that we can say about this defense from their performance on Sunday. The adjustments. An underwhelming first quarter. I really thought that Aaron Rodgers was going to just discount, double check down the entire game because it seemed like they had kind of found that, abusive spot in the defense that most teams do, just dumping it out over to the flat, dumping it to a curl route. And they were able to kind of get the ball moving. You saw Green Bay put 10 points up on the board within a matter of a couple minutes. And, the Bucs offense wasn't going anywhere. So for the defense to, firstly recognize that Jamel Dean pick six, let's talk about it. Glad that they recognize that because that's the same damn route that is always a pick six whenever the Bucs throw it. And I was delighted to see it happen to another team finally, but their ability to recognize that, Jamel Dean realizing, making a great play on the football, taking it to the house at a key moment in the football game. The great play by Carlton Davis, which led to a Mike Edwards interception. Obviously, it was a great play from Carlton Davis, but I don't think they expected that interception. But it helped. And it was at a key moment in the game when the Bucs needed to take control, and they went out there and just did that. But the difference that we've seen from Chicago to this week when it comes to the adjustments, something that we spent a lot of time bitching about here on the show. I'm glad to see what I did. And this defense, as we've said a bunch of times so far, they're playing at another level.
They are playing at a level that, I mean, like you look back on that 5-game win streak in 2016 and they were playing with about like the same like success basically. But it doesn't seem like they were playing with the same energy that this one is. Like this defense flies, man. Like this defense is built on speed and killer instincts, and they got all the tools to be a successful defense. They really do. It's Jamel Dean almost had a pick last week too because he recognized that the Bears were just running kind of like them flat curls.
Yeah,
and he almost jumped it. I believe he just mistimed it by like a second or so. Ended up being an incompletion. But, yeah, this time there was no mistake. And like you said, to start, it seemed like it was going to be a long day because it didn't seem like the Bucs were prepared for what the Packers were going to do at all. And it kind of did seem that way based on the press conferences. I think Jamel Dean or Devin White said, they were kind of throwing stuff at us that we didn't really expect. So maybe like them crossers and stuff, like they really weren't expecting that from Green Bay early on. So there was definitely an adjustment made there. They were playing some soft man. Like they were playing man, but they were playing like soft man. Like it wasn't like bump at the line and then run. It was sort of like stay back, but stay on your man. And it was kind of weird. Yeah, I mean, credit to them. The first drive, the Packers went down and they had to settle for a field goal. So that's a win right there. And then, obviously they got the touchdown, but yeah, it was a day. It was a complete day for this defense. And I mean, Devin White and Levante David were just outstanding. Devin White got his first sack of the year. Levante David had a sack. I thought that Jason Pierre-Paul was on another level as well. I know that David Bakhtiari did get injured.
Yeah, especially once they threw that backup left tackle in there. He was just using and
done.
abusing.
He was toast. Yeah, he was. We'd like to see a little bit more from Shaq Barrett. I know that Green Bay's offensive line is good, but it seemed like a lot of people were starting to get pressure and hits on Rodgers when the game really opened up, and that's where you'd like to see Barrett, go out, get after it. But yeah, I mean, just a great job by this defense, and hopefully it's something they can build on. They're not gonna go out and dominate every game like this one. That's not going to happen. If you're expecting that, on Sunday night, you're gonna be disappointed because you're just not gonna smash every single opponent you have. That's not gonna happen. This is the NFL. So hopefully they can build on it and have another strong performance in Las Vegas and come out with a win because, I think that it was a big key for the defense because they showed that they can do it against the bad teams. They relatively shut down the Panthers. They shut down the Broncos. Chargers had some success, and the Bears really were but I mean, this Packers offense, everybody was talking about it, right? And just how good it was. And I don't even know if the Packers got past the 50-yard line after they went up 10-0. Like that's how good it was. And just like I said, there's not really a whole lot to say just because it's simple. I mean, they just dominated this football game on the defensive side of the ball, and the offense was super efficient, no turnovers. They got first downs on third downs. There's not a whole lot to complain about. There's not a whole lot to even say. It was just a complete domination by this defense. And I want to give before I forget, I do want to give a quick shout out to Ryan Suckup because he put the hook on that baby.
Oh man.
And
that was beautiful.
That baby was like I don't even know.
It's a 50-yarder, right?
Yeah, it was 50-yarder, but baby, that was man. I thought, I was like, oh, that's nowhere close. And I was like, oh, it's in. I'm getting pretty close to stop, to start not make your kicks on the checklist because he keeps doing that. It'll be all right. So, I'm really hoping that this is sort of the spark, right? This is sort of the thing. Not having Vita Vea is going to hurt him. It just is. But they got some reinforcements, which we'll talk about in a few minutes here. Just a fantastic day, really. Antoine Winfield almost got a pick, too. Just want to throw it out there.
Yes, he did.
To end my rambling. And it would have been, I think, the first time in NFL history because Antoine Winfield Sr. picked off Aaron Rodgers as well. So it would have been the first time in NFL history that father and son picked off the same quarterback if he would have caught the ball, but whatever.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it would have been nuts, but oh well. But yeah, Bucks defense is easily top 5, top 3 unit in the league, and some could argue that's the best.
Yes, sir. That's the boldest claim I've ever heard you make on this show in support of the Bucks, and I guess that it just is a testament to the great mood that you're in. So a 38-10 victory for the Bucks, as we've been talking about. They are 4-2, and as of this week, they are still first place in the NFC South. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the run defense before we break things down and wrap up. This run defense, they got some reinforcements. As you had mentioned, the Buccaneers agreed to a trade that would send nose tackle Steve McClendon to Tampa Bay. They got him from New York, the lowly Jets. The Buccaneers gave up their 6th-round pick in 2022 to New York, and they got the Jets' 7th-round pick in 2023. So Steve McClendon, a veteran name, and I would say one of the better veterans along that horrible Jets defensive line. But I think Steve McClendon is a bigger name than, anybody else I thought they would have signed at this point. And it happened, like 15 minutes after the game? Jason must have been sending texts in the fourth quarter once that game was done.
Yeah, it happened like a half hour or so after the game. Although Greg Allman did point out, it did seem like he knew he was being traded before the game because he said on his Instagram story one last time or whatever before the game or something like that. So it seemed like they knew pretty much, but I think Steve McClendon right now is probably better than Snacks Harrison at this point in their careers. So he was a team captain. I think a lot of people are going to say, well, if he's a solid player, why did the Jets just give him away? Look, this is at the end of the day, yeah, it's a business, but you also have respect for people. Steve McClendon is 34 years old, and he's on an 0-6 Jets team that's getting blown out every time. He was their team captain. They say everybody raves about his leadership in the locker room and such a high character guy he is. And I just think they had just that much respect for him that they were like, hey, like we'll basically get nothing in return to send you to a playoff contender. Like we'll do you that solid. They're doing him a solid there, and he's not going to come and stay. He's not going to come in and be Vita Vea or be better than Vita Vea. Don't expect it. But I think they like Nacho in a specific role, and I think that role it doesn't include him playing over 50% of the snaps. So I checked out this season. McClendon has played just under 50% of the snaps pretty much every game this season. So I'd expect something similar to that. I'd expect it almost to be 50-50 with McClendon and Nacho when McClendon's able to get going here. Also, another thing, it may not take him as long to pick up the scheme as long as his COVID tests come back negative, because he did play for Todd Bowles for about 2 or 3 seasons. So he is familiar with the Todd Bowles defense. And yeah, I think it's a great trade. It's a proactive move. I think it's something that, they recognize that, like, hey, we look at the free agents there. We don't think there's going to be anybody better. Let's go out and just grab this guy. I love it. I think I don't, obviously the player is solid, but I just love I don't love the actual trade. I like the idea that we have a hole. Let's go out and fill it with a cheaper option that we basically got for nothing. Yeah. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, I definitely like the move. I think you hit the nail on the head, and I'm glad that the Jets respect a guy like McClendon enough to do him that favor. He is absolutely a bona fide veteran in the NFL, and he has been a bright spot on that Jets defensive line for quite some time. So happy to have him in Tampa, and good news to hear about the Todd Bowles familiarity there as well. You brought him up a little bit. I wanted to ask you a little bit more. What do you think of Nacho's performance on Sunday afternoon? I thought he was more than serviceable right there. He got his nose in a couple of plays, and like you said, I think the coaching staff also liked what they saw.
Yeah, I think they did. I liked what Nacho was able to do. I just think, like I said, I think they like him in that role where he's coming on every now and then and not staying on permanently. I think they like him as that rotational piece. They don't like him as that starter piece. And I understand that. I understand why. So I think they wanted to make sure that they got 2 good rotational pieces in McClendon and Nacho now. So I thought he was solid. I thought, he did his job. Obviously, there's a difference. Like I said earlier, you can tell the difference between Vita Vea and Nacho being there, because there were some lanes I thought to myself, I was like, yeah, they ran right up the middle, and that wouldn't be. But, I thought Nacho was very serviceable, like you said, and I thought he did a pretty solid job.
Hell yeah. So let's talk about this team as a whole. It honestly, it feels like when we don't have as much to complain about, these shows fly by. Normally we do about an hour show, or about 38 minutes, and we've talked over everything on my prep sheet. But I want to ask you one last question. Obviously, we'll get into a little bit more on our game preview show this week. That'll be dropping Thursday. But where does this team go from here? As you said, they're not going to steamroll everybody. But the way that they played against Green Bay, it's hard to not write them off for, I think the Vegas game could be interesting. But the Giants, no excuse we should lose to the Giants at this point. You and I both know that. So does everybody listening. But what I'm trying to ask is, this team as a whole, where do they go from here? Just maintaining perfection as long as they can?
Yeah, so basically, what you said basically about these 2 games coming up, I agree with. Vegas is, I think, an average team, but it's also it's a road game. Vegas has upset Kansas City and New Orleans, so they're not really to be overlooked. If you lose to them, that's fine. Teams lose to teams that are not as good as them, and I don't believe the Raiders are as good as the Buccaneers. But that next game versus the Giants, that's got to be a win. That's got to be a win. That's not even close. That can't be close. Yeah, that's just the future for that. Yeah, you're always going to strive for perfection, right? I mean, you're always going to just try to do your best, but like I said, you're not going to steamroll everybody. And I think it's going to be a week to week thing. I think you're not going to be able to run, every time. You're not going to be able to run the ball like you did. The offensive line isn't going to hold up like it did. Yeah, I guarantee you there will never be another game this season where you commit 0 turnovers, 0 penalties, and 0 sacks in the same game. That'll never happen. Considering it didn't happen since 1999. So you're not going to play as flawlessly, but that's okay. What you need to do is you need to take care of business against the teams that you should. And honestly, there's 4 winnable games right in a row here. Vegas, the Giants, the Saints game. It's gonna be tough. Like I still think the Saints, the roster's good. They're getting a little healthier now. Michael Thomas is going to be back, and the roster's good still, I think, and it'll be a tough game. But I mean, I don't see a reason. Like I think that game's pretty even. Like I don't see a reason the Bucs can't win that game. And then Carolina, who's looked decent, but I don't see a reason the Bucs can't win that game. So you got 4 games coming up here. You could be 8-2. That's huge. Do I expect you to win all 4? No, probably not. But I think you got to get at least maybe 3. I think out of these next 3 games, you got to get 2. It's all about just taking it one step at a time. Enjoy this game, but focus on Vegas now. Don't, whatever. Like, don't be sitting there on Wednesday and Thursday talking about how you whooped Green Bay, because guess what's going to happen on Sunday night? Then you're going to get whooped because Vegas had a bye week. They were they were sitting there watching the Bucs, like they were sitting there watching them, and they've been game planning. And Gruden has a great staff there, and they got some talented players. So it's not going to be an easy challenge, but I think they should be up to it. They should be up to it, and just like I said last week, I was like, playoff teams, they make the playoffs because they beat the teams that are good teams. They'll occasionally beat a team that's a good team, and the Bucs just did that with the Packers. I predicted the Bucs to be 3-3 when at this point in the season, but I predicted them to beat the Bears and lose to the Packers. Now they lost to the Bears and beat the Packers. Cool. Right? Awesome. Just, you got to take advantage of it now. And like I said, there's 4 winnable games coming up here before you have the Rams and the Chiefs, 2 tough games. So just take it one step at a time, one game at a time, and just start stacking them. Just start stacking them.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about the expectations of the Bucs this season, but when push comes to shove, if you're a championship team, you go on a run right here. This is where you stack them up. This is where you put together games in the middle of the season. And you know what? If you lose to a Kansas City or an LA later on down the line, it hurts a little bit less because of the run that you potentially go on over these next few weeks. But if you're a championship team, you go out right now and you get another run going. But the Buccaneers, 4-2 after 6 weeks of NFL football, first place in the NFC South. And I just can't wait for Sunday to be here, man. Sunday Night Football.
If they want to win the NFC South, win 2 out of 3 of these next 3, and one of your 2 has to be against New Orleans. Like if you want to win the NFC South, that's what you got to do. Preferably, honestly, if you're thinking about it, if you have to win 2 out of 3, you'd prefer to lose you'd prefer to lose to Vegas.
Oh, dude, I can't lose to New York again. Oh,
no, I'm just saying, you'd prefer to lose to Vegas because New York is an NFC team, so that matters more.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
In tiebreakers and stuff. So you'd prefer to beat the NFC team and lose the AFC team. But obviously the goal is to win all 3. So, there is a prime opportunity here to take control of the NFC South with these next 3 games and 4 games because you got a division opponent right after New Orleans. So 3 straight primetime games coming up. Sunday night, Monday night, and then another Sunday night. So going to be a lot of late nights for Bucs fans.
And as you guys know, we're going to be here with you every step of the way, giving you the game previews and talking to you about it the Monday after the game. With all of that being said, that's just about going to do it for this episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening on any of our podcast outlets. or checking us out with video over on YouTube. If you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you get notified every time we upload a show and every single time that we decide to live stream and maybe take some phone calls every now and again. Also, make sure you check out the Believe Podcast Network. We are the official Buccaneers pod, but they have got a great selection of football and just sports in general podcasts. I mean, if you're looking for other sports, they've got you covered there. If you're looking for, just another team's perspective, they've got you there. They've got NFL Hall of Famers hosting shows. They've got, they've got famous coaches from Last Chance U hosting shows. I mean, they have really got a star-studded lineup, and we are just still really excited to be a part of this podcast network. So make sure you go check them out. Believe, pronounced Believe, but spelled BLEAV. And also a shout out to our sponsors at betonline.ag. I'll tell you what, guys, if you're going to take any bets this weekend, take the over on Vegas and the Bucs. I don't know what line is right now, but I'm taking the over in that game.
Well, I mean, I don't know what was the over under on the Green Bay game, but I mean, I would have. That might be the most shocking thing from this weekend for me, honestly. That the Bucs kept the Packers to 10 points. Yeah, absolutely. That is just crazy.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see what this defense can do next week. We know the Vegas, they've got a little bit of firepower on their offense. They can definitely put some points on the board.
Vegas's defense, I think you can exploit that a little bit in the passing game, though. So I think their secondary is average or so. So I mean, the Bucs having Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, another week, Gronkowski heating up, maybe Brady finds some real success there. So
absolutely,
for first trip to Vegas, let's make it 1-0 in Vegas.
Yes, sir, in that brand new Roomba stadium that they have got. But make sure, guys, that you follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show and, of course, Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow Bucs_daily on Instagram. That is Mr. Evans' Instagram, the #1 Buccaneer fan page, over 25,000 followers. All they got to do is give them the verified check mark at this point. You can also follow him on Twitter, where, maybe if he starts following some people back, he'll get a check mark. But you can find him over there at EvanNFL. And then you can find myself on social media at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS, Instagram and Twitter. And if you follow me, I'll follow you back, unlike the Philly sports fan.
Ouch.
Yeah. Does it hurt?
Okay, Seamus.
He's going to bust that one out every single time, like you said. Yes, all right.
Yes, I am.
Oh, man. We need to go ahead and wrap this thing up. Thank you guys so much for listening. We will talk to you Thursday for the game preview show against the Raiders and former Buccaneers head coach John Gruden. Maybe we'll have a special guest. I don't know. We'll figure it out when the time comes. But thank you so much for listening to our show. I am your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off from my co-host, Mr. Evan Wanish. We'll talk to you guys Thursday. Go Bucs.